She stepped into the cathedral of fashion, wearing worn-out slip-ons, a crumpled cotton shirt, and a faded tote bag. She brought no crown, no media entourage, and not a single soul rose to defend her when she was mocked and dragged away like a nobody. But just hours later, the fashion world would come to a halt. The lights that once glorified the imposters would now illuminate the woman they had forgotten. This was not merely a story of justice. It was proof the silence of today can become the voice that changes an entire industry tomorrow. This is the story of Ava Monroe, the woman they once called an intruder, until they realized she was the one who had built the kingdom. Autumn in Paris was anything but gentle. Cold sunlight, sharp winds, and a sheen of artificial glamour stretched across Avenue Montaigne like a velvet carpet, one that only the accepted were permitted to walk on. And today, at the Grand Palais, hailed as the Cathedral of Haute Couture, all eyes were fixed on Paris Fashion Week, the apex of fashion's elitist theater. People didn't just come to admire fashion here. They came to prove they belonged under the shimmering gold glass dome, where champagne clinks mingled with camera clicks. Ava Monroe walked in, quietly. No fanfare, no spotlight, but with that one step, she became the target. A crumpled cotton shirt, dark canvas trousers, hair tied loosely at the nape with a faded fabric band, and old slip-ons, stained with time and street dust. Her appearance clashed violently with a crowd glittering in Dior and Balenciaga polished gems beneath chandelier lights. Oh, honey, did she think this was a charity bazaar? A voice snickered from the left. Ava turned slightly. Bianca Quinn, platinum-haired, sequin dress, and a six-figure influencer was live, streaming directly into Ava's face. Look at this, Bianca smirked. Homeless chic, darlings. Laughter swept through the room like a wind. Ava didn't flinch, didn't retreat. She simply tightened her grip on the beige tote bag slung over her shoulder. Inside it, a sketchbook, a pencil, and a faded photograph. Did she get lost on the way back from a laundromat? Model Julian Reese yawned, tossing a fashion brochure toward her. Here, use this to print a job application. The laughter roared. Cameras turned toward her. Short clips were uploaded within seconds. Every sneer, every judging eye, every cruel word is broadcast. Like a digital execution, Ava said nothing. She walked on. Silently, she reached row 3, to the seat she had paid for using her last savings. Sorry, this area isn't for strangers. The voice was crisp, cold. Delilah Knox, PR officer for the event, stepped forward, clipboard in hand like a warrant of exile. Her eyes scanned Ava from head to toe, like inspecting a defective item. Ava reached into her bag, pulled out her ticket. No words, just a thin sheet of paper confirming her seat. Delilah frowned, eyes darting back to Ava's slip-ons, as if they alone insulted the sanctity of the runway. There must be some mistake, Bianca's voice streamed across the internet. Oh God, did someone invite the maid to the show? Ava sat, unblinking, the words sliced like knives, but her face remained still like a winter lake. No makeup, no designer labels, but her eyes deep, shadowed by a quiet sorrow, or what some could not look away from. The woman beside her, Vanessa Hart, let out a loud laugh. Kick her out before she cheapens the show. Delilah gestured. 2 security guards emerged, tall, in black suits, expressionless. One grabbed Ava's tote, yanking it from her. What's in here? Stolen fabric. The hall shook with laughter. Pretty sure she wandered in from a homeless shelter, Julian shouted, capturing the moment Ava was dragged from her seat. Her slip-ons skidded across the marble floor, a soft sound, yet sharp enough to make the whole room fall quiet for a beat, because in that fleeting moment, Ava lifted her head. Her eyes didn't plead, didn't fear, They held only one thing: I know who you are, and I've come back. And as the doors behind her closed and the runway lights dimmed, no one realized they hadn't just kicked out a stranger, they had expelled the very soul of a once mighty empire. A decade ago, Ava Monroe was the name fashion whispered with reverence. She was known as the golden hand of couture, a visionary who stitched stories into every seam. Then she vanished. No press release, no farewell, no final show. She disappeared as if she had never existed. But the truth doesn't disappear. It waits until someone dares to wake it. Back then, Serena Vale was a no-name intern, a fast learner, yes, bright, charming, but more than anything, a mimic. She memorized Ava's sketches, traced every design line in her mind, and secretly photographed them. At night, she sent them to her personal email. In 2014, when Serena's debut collection launched and took the world by storm, Ava knew she had been betrayed. She filed a lawsuit, but the evidence vanished. The press called her jealous. The industry turned its back, with nothing but a sketchbook, a few original samples, and a crushed sense of honor. Ava left Paris. She didn't return to take revenge. She returned to remind them that truth, however late, never loses its value. Back at the Grand Palais, Ava was dragged into a side corridor away from the runway's golden glow, into a place dim, cold, and indifferent. Her tote was torn from her shoulder. Her slip-ons scraped the marble, echoing eerily through the hallway. As soon as she vanished from the audience's view, the music inside faded, lights softened. The moment had come, a voice announced through the speakers. Please welcome the legendary designer, Serena Vale. Applause erupted like fireworks. Serena emerged in a white silk gown, its edges embroidered with gold threads. Her platinum hair was swept into an elegant bun, her emerald eyes gleaming with power. She walked like a queen of the night. Her smile is perfect. Her presence is undeniable. But as she scanned the crowd of elites, her eyes faltered. One heartbeat, two. They landed right on the edge of the stage, just beyond the curtains, where Ava stood, flanked by security. Serena's face paled. No, it can't be. She hadn't meant to speak into the mic, but the words, whispers of dread, were broadcast across the room. The crowd stilled, cameras shifted, and Ava, hair loose, face calm, stepped into the light. The backstage crew moved to block her, but Serena stepped back, not in fear, but because she realized the truth had begun to crack the perfect glass. You shouldn't be here, Serena whispered, her voice trembling for the first time in public. Ava stopped. She opened her tote. Slowly, out came a silver card, engraved, Atelier AM. The room gasped. Some editors froze. Those who remembered or had heard of Maison X knew this moment was larger than it seemed. Ava spoke. Calm, clear. I didn't come to apologize or to cause chaos. I came to reclaim my name. Serena stiffened. Ava stepped closer. We used to be a team. I designed. You learned. I drew. You snuck photos. I trusted. You betrayed. A ripple of whispers. Ava lifted her phone. On screen, a video. Grainy. Old. But unmistakable. Serena with short hair. Before the cosmetic touch-ups was seen opening Ava's drawer in the design studio, snapping photos of her sketches and emailing them to herself. Dated February 3rd, 2013. Ava's voice was almost tender. That was the year your so-called breakthrough debuted. But for me, it marked an ending. The audience held its breath. The phone's screen lit up Serena's face, pale, devoid of glamour. Only truth remained. A fashion editor stood, A Vogue contributor texted furiously, "I think we crowned the wrong queen." The spotlight seemed to change hue, no longer soft and golden, now harsh, exposing every lie it once glorified. Cameras, still live streaming to millions, now turned not to celebrate, but to scrutinize. Serena swallowed hard. Her voice cracked. This is fabricated, but her words were weak, barely more than a reflex. Ava said nothing. She reached into her tote. Again, this time, a worn leather folder. Inside copyright documents, royal purchase receipts from Monaco, and a handwritten thank you letter from Beyoncé's stylist in 2012. Naomi Wilder, senior editor at Harper's Bazaar, stepped forward. Ava nodded. Naomi opened the file. Stamps, dates, unquote, signatures. She went live on Instagram. This is irrefutable. The designs Serena Vale claimed as her own belonged to Ava Monroe. Gasps echoed. A whisper broke the silence. "We've been praising a thief." Serena stumbled back. Flashbulbs exploded. The lenses that once flattered her now became executioners. Julian Rees lowered his head. Bianca Quinn whispered desperately to her assistant, trying to kill her livestream. Too late. On Twitter, hashtags exploded. Hashtag Maison X returns. Hashtag Ava was right. Hashtag Crown Thief. And Ava, standing calmly beneath the light, said softly, "I don't need anyone to bow or beg, but truth must be called by its name." A lone pair of hands clapped, then another, then an uproar. The audience who had clapped for Serena mere minutes ago now rose to their feet. For Ava, not because she won, but because she dared to return. Within less than an hour after Ava Monroe unveiled the truth, the internet exploded. Hashtags like hashtag Maison X returns, hashtag Ava was right, and most strikingly, hashtag Crown Thief shot to the top of Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok in over 30 countries. Clips of Ava raising her evidence, of Serena's stunned silence, and of the standing ovation flooded every platform shared millions of times. Fashion publications scrambled to rewrite their headlines in real time. Vogue edited its livestream title, "Paris in Turmoil. Ava Monroe exposes Serena Vale's empire." Harper's Bazaar posted a breaking banner, "An empire built on theft." The mocking clips from earlier Ava being dragged out, being Colada made, were now reversed in meaning. They became evidence of how easily the world mocks what it doesn't understand. Viewers flooded the comments. They laughed at a legend. Ava didn't just find Maison X. She was the conscience of this industry. This is why you never judge by appearances. Bianca Quinn's Instagram lost nearly 40,000 followers overnight. The main perfume sponsor publicly withdrew its partnership with her. Julian Rees was dropped by his agency. A behind-the-scenes video of him laughing while Ava was manhandled went viral and was met with public outrage. On YouTube, creators began dissecting Ava's career, recovering old interviews, footage, and particularly one quote that brought tears to viewers. "I don't crave fame. I crave recognition, because every stitch, every sketch, is a part of my soul." That night, Ava didn't stay backstage. She exited the Grand Palais, the same way she came in quietly, but this time, there was a crowd waiting outside, not to mock, but to applaud. Some brought flowers, some just raised their phones, capturing her in the soft glow of streetlights as she slipped away. Meanwhile, across Paris, inside a luxury apartment, Serena Vale smashed her vanity mirror, not because Ava had returned, but because this time she knew she would be erased. Social media didn't just reverse, it judged. It delivered a justice the courts once failed to serve, and that night, justice called Ava Monroe by her rightful name. The following morning, newspapers across Europe printed her image with headlines like, "The Return of a Visionary." On the other side of the spectrum, Serena's empire began to crumble. Brands that once partnered with her terminated their contracts. Her winter collection was canceled by major department stores. On the stock exchange, Vail House shares plummeted by 30% in 24 hours. Then came the reckoning of her allies. Bianca Quinn was blacklisted from future events by Chanel, Dior, and Givenchy. Her ad deals collapsed. Her YouTube channel was demonetized. A clip of her calling Ava Couture trash was reposted with the hashtag mocked a legend. Julian Reese was publicly dropped. A behind-the-scenes video of him gleefully watching Ava's humiliation became a meme of shame. People rallied. Drop him from every campaign. Marcus Devereaux, Vail House's creative director, faced investigation. Leaked emails revealed he had knowingly covered up Serena's theft for over a decade. Even the lighting crew, makeup artists, and backstage staff who laughed at Ava were named in industry forums. A top stylist posted on Instagram, "If you laughed at Ava last night, check your integrity." But something deeper began stirring across the fashion world. Young designers started sharing their own stories, ideas stolen, portfolios buried, dreams dismissed. They used a single hashtag silent needles, the symbol Ava once sketched quietly in the margins of her notebooks. Serena Vail was no longer couture royalty. She became the face of fraud, betrayal, and stolen glory. Her TED Talk on feminism in fashion was removed from YouTube. Her flagship stores closed. Investors withdrew. Paris Fashion Week banned her for 5 years, not because of a scandal, but because this time the truth was too loud to ignore, and that truth was spoken by the very woman they once cast out, Ava Monroe. Ava didn't hold a press conference. She didn't bask in triumph. She didn't appear on talk shows to recount her betrayal. Instead, she did what she was best at. She quietly began again in a sunlit attic studio in Montmartre, where light streamed through a round window and danced on faded wooden floors. Ava revived Atelier M. She started from scratch, this time with a small group of young designers, those the fashion world had abandoned, or who had seen their ideas stolen. She named the academy the Silent Needle. But here, Ava didn't just teach how to sketch, choose fabrics, or sculpt form. She taught what she had learned the hard way over a decade of enforced silence, that to create is not to seek fame, but to protect beauty from lies. She read every sketch, corrected every seam, and wrote handwritten notes of encouragement to each student. And every evening, under warm amber light, Ava sat by her old wooden desk, sketching new designs in pencil, her old beige tote resting by her side. Her first post-return collection, titled Resilience, was a fusion of bold lines and raw textures, linen, cotton, recycled denim, no glittering gold, no grand runways. The collection debuted online accompanied by soft piano music, played by an orphaned student. It sold out in 3 hours. Emma Watson and Zanaya were the first to wear Ava's designs on the Cannes red carpet. They weren't just wearing dresses. They were wearing a statement, arising from the ashes. Letters poured in from across the world, from girls in India, students in Nigeria, and single mothers in Eastern Europe. All of them wrote, "Thank you for making me believe in kindness again." Julian Lane, her husband, didn't appear in magazines. He quietly funded the Silent Needle, built its tech infrastructure, and shielded Ava from the spotlight. At night, he sketched beside her on the balcony, in an old sweater, with a glass of red wine and soft jazz playing from a dusty record player. They didn't need revenge. They just needed the freedom to create something beautiful and real. And Serena Vail? She now lived in a small apartment in Nice, far from the press. No more silk robes, no more red lips, only fear and an emptiness that no fame could fill. Ava didn't return to win. She returned to rebuild. And this time, she was built with the truth. As autumn touched Paris once more, the city was no longer a playground of sparkling runways. It became a place where people whispered her name, Ava Monroe, like a reminder that truth can be hidden, but never extinguished. Fashion students no longer looked up to Serena Vale. They studied Ava in ethics classes at design schools. Her once dismissed sketches were now displayed in Paris's largest fashion museum under the theme, "The Hands That Were Silenced." A special issue of Vogue was released on the one-year anniversary of her return. Its cover headline read simply, yet powerfully, "She built, they stole, she reclaimed." At London Fashion Week, Ava didn't walk the stage, but when the first 12 students of the Silent Needle presented their group collection introduced as "The Generation That Won't Stay Silent," the entire room rose in applause. Beneath the shimmering lights, each piece carried the aesthetic and ethical DNA Ava had sown: honesty, humanity, and a refusal to be ruled by fame. Atelier AM's Instagram reached 2 million followers within 3 months, but the numbers weren't the true milestone. It was the stories users left behind. "I used to think only celebrities had the right to create. Ava made me believe in my own dream. My ideas were stolen in 2018. But because of Ava, I restarted my career." A shift swept through the industry. Dozens of fashion houses signed what became known as the Ava Commitment, an ethical pledge to protect independent designers' intellectual property. Art students wore silent needle pins, pledging themselves to one principle: no theft, no silence. No one asked Ava to be the face of justice, but through her humble, fierce presence, she became it. A young model once said on live TV, "This industry used to celebrate glamour. Now we're learning to honor what's right." Because of Ava, her legacy wasn't fabric. It was a redrawing of the moral map of fashion and beyond. Not long after the Silent Needle swept across the fashion world, echoes began to resonate from every corner of the creative industry. Not just designers, but artists, architects, filmmakers, writers, even coders began to reference a new gold standard, the Ava Standard, a set of unwritten rules grounded in respect for original thought, in the protection of personal expression, and in a bold rejection of plagiarism. Top universities from Harvard to Oxford introduced Ava Monroe in lectures on creative ethics. An online course titled The Ava Code launched in over 60 countries, training hundreds of thousands of students to detect design theft and uphold ethical practices across industries. At the International Culture Summit in Geneva, Ava received a special honor, Icon of Truth and Creative Restoration, the first time in history a fashion designer had ever won humanitarian recognition. But Ava declined the stage. She left only a small handwritten note: "I don't speak for victims. I represent the power of standing back up after being crushed by silence." The words were projected onto a giant screen, and in that rare moment of silence, the room didn't just applaud. They stood, because what Ava had done wasn't just an act, it was a wave, a mirror held up to the world's conscience. That year alone, over 300 organizations signed on to a global pledge to uphold ethical creation, modeled after the Silent Needle. UNESCO launched a campaign on anti-cultural plagiarism, naming Ava Monroe as its inaugural figurehead. Meanwhile, Ava's life remained unchanged. She still spent mornings sipping coffee with her students on the flower-covered rooftop, afternoons reviewing designs, evenings sketching beside her husband beneath warm lamplight. When asked by a journalist, "Do you feel like you've won?" Ava smiled. "I didn't come to win. I came so No one else has to be silent, like I was. It was the simplest answer, but also the most powerful. And finally, the world listened. One winter afternoon, snow whispered against the windows of her studio. Ava Monroe sat at her old wooden table, witness to every rise and fall in her life, flipping through new sketches. On the walls, handwritten letters from students and creators across the world hung like quiet notes in a global symphony. She wore no crown, no cloak of fame, yet every choice, every step she took was redrawing the ethical map of creativity. A first-year student approached her, cradling her very first dress in trembling hands. "Ms. Ava, what should I do if people laugh at this design?" Ava looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. "You don't need to be accepted. You only need to be honest with yourself. The rest, time will answer." That wasn't philosophy. That was truth distilled from blood, silence, and years of being erased. The next collection was named Ashes and Light, a symphony of what was lost and what was reborn. Each piece came with a story, a forgotten memory, a stolen idea, now reclaimed under the light of justice. When Ava entered the exhibit, there were no blinding camera flashes, just grateful eyes, soft murmurs, and a single empty chair at the heart of the gallery, reserved for all the dreams that had never been told. On that chair rested her old tote bag. Inside it, an unfinished sketch. It didn't need completion, because Ava's journey was still being written. She didn't need to be crowned queen of fashion. She was a memory. She was flame. She was the language of truth, sewn in gold thread, silent, but never fading. As the silent needle movement gained momentum across the globe, something remarkable happened. People began writing back, but not just from fashion, from film studios, where junior screenwriters finally dared to speak up, from animation houses, where illustrators revealed how their characters had been copied and repackaged, from tech startups, where developers began tagging their work with #AvaStandard, and from all corners of the world, people started asking one question: what does it mean to create ethically? Ava Monroe never positioned herself as a leader. However, leaders are not always chosen. Sometimes they simply rise by surviving what was meant to silence them. In a matter of months, universities updated syllabi, adding the Ava Code to design, media, and ethics classes. The free online Ava program reached over 400,000 learners in its first year. At the World Creative Integrity Conference, Ava's story was used to open every panel, from film to architecture to digital art, and yet Ava never changed her rhythm. In the mornings, she still drank coffee from a chipped ceramic mug, laughing with her students on the rooftop. She still read every portfolio by hand. She still wrote encouragement in pencil. At night, she still sat beside Julian, their sketches spread out under a single reading lamp. There was no need for spotlights, just quiet commitment. One spring morning, a girl from Brazil sent Ava a letter. "They laughed at my poem in class, but I read your story, and now I write louder." Ava didn't reply with words. She sent the girl a fountain pen engraved with a single phrase: "What is true will remain." On the first anniversary of The Silent Needle, an international exhibition opened in New York, Tokyo, London, and Paris simultaneously. Titled Threaded Truths, it featured stolen ideas returned, anonymous creators now celebrated, and students from the margins stepping into the light. At the heart of each exhibit was a chair, simple, wooden, unoccupied. Beside it, Ava's words: "This is for the dream not yet told." In a final twist of poetic justice, the Metropolitan Museum of Art requested Ava's old sketchbook for permanent display. She declined. Instead, she mailed them something else: Her beige tote bag frayed at the straps, ink-stained, faded by years. In the note, she wrote, this carried more than paper. It carried silence, belief, and the courage to come back. By then, Serena Vale had disappeared from the industry. No comeback, no interview, only a silence that once belonged to Ava. Her name faded from the press, her TED Talk scrubbed from memory, her empire repossessed by time and truth. In stark contrast, Ava's students rose, not as proteges, however, as a generation who believed that creativity must not come at the cost of conscience. At London Fashion Week, 12 of them walked out together, holding hands, wearing designs not signed by their names, but by values, compassion, integrity, boldness, truth. The crowd didn't just applaud. They wept, not for Ava, but because they knew she changed the ending for all of them. And as snow once again returned to Paris, Ava sat at her studio window. She watched it fall, peaceful and slow, covering the rooftops like a thread across the fabric. She didn't need awards. She didn't need a crown. She had something stronger, a legacy woven from wounds, sown with silence, but blazing with truth. They tried to erase Ava Monroe, but instead, they made her unforgettable. Not everyone is celebrated after being betrayed. Not everyone is strong enough to return to the place that once broke them. But there are those who don't need to be called queens, because their silence, their truth, and their loyalty to what is original have already made them a legacy. She didn't seek revenge. She chose rebirth. She didn't need a crown, because the world stood up on its own when she walked in